Now, one of the most tremendously difficult things to do is to plot the path of a Nigerian politician. The best guess really is to expect that there'll be multiple defections and they'll switch sides and policies more than prostitutes change partners, as one former Nigerian leader put it. But in the case of the lawyer, political economist and former deputy governor of the Nigerian Central Bank, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, it's straightforward enough. After venturing into the murky world of Nigerian politics and hinting that though he would not be a candidate in 2023, he may well continue in the field of politics, he's now come out to say that it's finally time to hang up his boots and there'll be no more partisan politics for him. But not to totally disappoint those who believed in him and supported him, he makes the rather tantalizing point that there are times and circumstances when he can better contribute to nation building from a non-partisan perspective. So how does he now see the political landscape going into 2023 and his role in it? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from Washington by the lawyer, political economist, former deputy governor of the Nigerian Central Bank, and former presidential candidate, Professor Kingsley Moghalu. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Great to see you again. Now, many people in politics who've achieved some prominence tend to feel rather low after they withdraw from politics. But in your case, you're saying that you're happy and have found peace in withdrawing from partisan politics. Tell us more.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Charles, for having me on. As you know, all my life, I have been a professional. I have been a global leader in domains that have crossed several disciplines, international diplomacy, economic policy, central banking, law, democracy and politics, and so on. And in 2018, I joined Nigerian politics and became the presidential candidate of one of the political parties, one of the smaller political parties. But my joining politics was out of a conviction that it is an important path through which we can change our country's destiny, since we claim to be a democracy. I've been in it for 4 years, and I can tell you with every sense of pride, not pride in terms of arrogance, but pride in terms of quiet fulfillment, that my candidacy as a presidential candidate in 2019 and my foray into politics has had a very significant impact in Nigeria. Ever since 1999, I believe I was probably the first person who wasn't a full-time professional politician to go seriously for the presidential race in 2019. Rousing the young people of Nigeria who had been marginalized, giving a sense of hope to millions of Nigerians that Nigeria's leadership could be somewhat, more intellectual, more technocratically competent, younger, and so on and so forth. So there has been impact, and that's why I say I'm satisfied. But I have made a personal decision that for me, I would rather now continue to contribute in Nigeria from a non-partisan perspective. Many of us know the events of the last some months ago when I was an aspirant for the ticket of a political party. When I was cheated out of that opportunity, I could have gone to any other party. Several other parties were offering me their ticket, but I chose not to do so. I could have decamped to another political party, a big one maybe, APC or PDP, and not be a candidate for anything, but I chose not to do so. I resigned from the party, said I would not join any party, and that I would not be a candidate in 2023. That position has allowed me to be able to make contributions that I myself can see and many others attest to, that have been helpful in the evolution of the polity. I have also gone into some professional endeavors, in particular, heading the think tank, an independent, non-partisan think tank, the Institute for Governance and Economic Transformation. There is no way you can run such an entity and be credible if you are an active partisan politician. Recently, we brought out the report, Nigeria's Poverty Trap and How to End It. That report was widely distributed, widely commented upon, and even several presidential candidates thanked me for the Institute's work in bringing out this report and said that it has helped them. I know, for example, some reached out to me personally and privately. Some commented publicly. For example, I know that Peter Obi commented on it on social media. So there are many ways you can influence policy, influence the discussion, influence the mindset. You must not be a partisan politician running for office. I'm no longer running for office in Nigeria. I have decided to run my life.
Right. Well, that's an interesting opening salvo. I expect there'll be some people who supported you who would be fairly disappointed. But looking more deeply at the statement that you issued about this, it seems to be replete with symbolic significance, given that you've been in the political trenches, as we said, with the best and the worst of them, and in your words, bloodied but unbowed. And your conclusion is that partisanship is simply too divisive, is it? And you've had enough of it.
Yes, for me as a person. Now, in a democracy, you cannot, do away with partisanship as a path to political power, because all the political parties are contending for the votes of Nigerians, for example. But, we have to look at the end game. The end game is the national interest. And there must always be people who are positioned maybe as independent, experienced statesmen who can also speak to the issues of the day and the issues of the future and advise the political partisans, advise the policy makers on the path to follow. That is where I want to be now. I have enough experience. I have enough global and national exposure. I have enough competence, and I have enough of a reputation to play that role.
And looking back at your foray into the political space, notably your presidential bid in 2019, how would you assess that effort? I know you touched on it earlier in your opening statement, but how would you assess that effort? And was it really worth it or not in your assessment?
Well, let's begin with the fact, in my own assessment, and that it was worth it. Absolutely worth it. I think it was a historical effort. I think it began to point and change the conversation in the Nigerian polity in a certain direction that we now see today, which is that the established politicians of the two main political parties, at least so far, have not delivered what Nigeria needs. What we have seen delivered, let's come down to the brass tacks, is 133 million Nigerians living in multidimensional poverty out of a population of 216 million. That's not a very good report card. My candidacy in 2019 was to make Nigerian politics to focus on the issues, to focus on policies, to focus on a vision. I was the first presidential candidate to come out with a well thought through manifesto, put together in a book, Big, Build, Innovate, and Grow, which many other candidates started copying. And so I feel like I have been a pathfinder. And today we see a lot more Nigerian young people interested in politics, engaging very actively. This was the journey that I began in 2019, and some others as well. Some other younger people also got involved in the fray. So I think it has been certainly worth it. I learned some important lessons, one of which is this, two very important lessons, or three. One, Nigerian politics is a money guzzler. If you have not stolen public funds, like I have not, if you are not massively independently wealthy, like I am not, because most of my life has been in public service, whether in the United Nations or in the Nigerian Central Bank, but I have been mostly in public life. If you don't have that type of money, and if you're not extremely desperate, you may not necessarily be able to win the gold trophy of the election itself. But in politics, there are many kinds of victories, such as the kinds that I believe that I also achieved. You may, like in a soccer match, you may not win the gold cup, but you may win the silver, you may win the bronze. And also there's the joy and the honor of participating in the sport. Now, the other lesson that I learned is that, of course, if the Electoral Act was not changed, there was no hope for politicians outside of APC and PDP. And so after the election in 2019, I played a major role in the advocacy for the Electoral Act that is going to govern the 23 elections. I also found out that Nigerians were not ready for the change they say they want. Many people will talk and talk, but if you have not stolen public funds and you're not so wealthy, are they prepared to donate their 1,000 naira, their 5,000 naira to give you 2 to 5 billion naira to run a strong campaign? The truth is that many of them are not. They talk and talk. And so the question is, you can kill yourself in this process because it carries a lot of risks. I campaigned across the whole country and in places, including in places that were just quite dangerous. The roads, the air, everywhere. And you ask yourself, look, I have a family. And I'm doing this, and I'm even spending my own personal resources that I don't have a lot of. And the people for whom you are fighting for, because many of them are illiterate, because many of them are poor, they will still go and vote for those people that have been their oppressors for a long time. So these were important lessons that I learned, and I had to ask myself a question as to whether the time has not come to reposition yourself and continue to contribute with your passion, your love for country, but you must not be a partisan. Some people will be partisans. I have chosen not to be, period.
Well, I have to say, Kingsley, that's an absolutely riveting assessment that you've given there. I mean, it's an education in itself and probably worth another one of your very interesting books. But I'm curious to know what this tells us, this experience that you've had and where you are now in your non-partisanship and you're hanging up your political boots. I mean, what does that tell us about whether you are likely to formally declare support for any of the candidates in this 2023 race and perhaps campaign for them?
As I said to you, I am now the head of an independent, non-partisan think tank that comes out with policy propositions and helps to educate the people and policymakers. And I think it is very inconsistent with this professional occupation for me now to come out and be declaring and campaigning for any particular candidate. Because if I do so, any report we come out with, any policy proposal we come out with, will shut out half of the political space because in their mind, they've already identified you with a particular candidate whom you're now campaigning for. And so the integrity of your professional work will be called into question. Have you seen anywhere in the world where anybody who runs a policy think tank declares partisan political interest? Of course not. As a citizen, I will have my preferences among candidates. I will vote for candidates that I will at various levels. Yes, I'm a citizen. But there's a bit of an inconsistency between what I'm doing now and going back into partisan politics, even though you're not a candidate, but you're still in partisan politics because you are campaigning for a particular person. But you can point the way to people as to what the country needs, and they can make their own judgment. Like one of the Greek philosophers said, I have nothing to teach anyone. All I have to do is to help them learn how to think. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. And I want to make one further point, which I think is very important. Nigeria is at the crossroads. Many people do not understand the depth of the mess in which Nigeria is today, whether from the point of view of the economy, from the point of view of security, from the point of view of nation building. Therefore, I believe that whoever wins the election, the problems of Nigeria cannot be solved only by partisan contest and control of power. We have to build a national consensus about what Nigeria means to each and every one of us. We have to build a consensus on how we see our future and our role in it. We have to build a consensus on where we are in the world. We are God's children too, and we're entitled to a place in the sun. For us to build that kind of consensus, there has to be some sort of government of national unity. There has to be some sort of reaching across the aisle. And I am more interested in that than in just partisanship for its own sake.
Again, that's an absolutely fascinating analysis that you've given there. And coming from that point of view, looking at this ballot through the prism of what has happened so far, and looking ahead to what 2023 might bring, what do you see?
I see a very, very uncertain picture in Nigeria today as we head into the 2023 elections. INEC offices are being blown up. That's just a very foreboding thing. I see uncertainty because for the first time in recent history, Nigerians are not sure who will win the next presidential election. From 1999, it seemed always obvious because there were always only two major parties. Today, we have at least four major contenders who control chunks of votes. And therefore, that's a picture of uncertainty. But I think it's good for our democracy because it has made the two older parties to now, they have to understand that they cannot take anything for granted anymore. And that means that the voters are becoming more and more empowered, and that's a good thing for democracy. So this is what I see. A bit of uncertainty. First of all, the security dimensions of the election, very important, need to be focused upon by INEC and the federal government. Then the question of the politics itself, nobody can predict the outcome. I can tell you that. And I think that's a very good thing, actually.
Well, I need to kind of have you drill down on that point, and at the risk of making you repeat yourself, because the things you say are extremely important, and I think people can draw lots of lessons from it. Let's try to look ahead to the aftermath of the February 25th presidential election. Do you see the dominance of the historical big two, the APC and the PDP, continuing and their fierce electoral rivalry taking center stage in the struggle for victory? Or do you see their dominance being brought to an end by a surge from parties such as Labour and the NNPP? And as I said, at the risk of making you repeat yourself, but that's a very important point.
Yes. Now, I believe that there will be surprises in 2023. So I do not see the unchallenged dominance of the APC and the PDP playing out. I believe that the newer contenders, such as the NNPP, such as Labour Party, I believe that they will take a significant chunk of votes, such that the outcome between the APC and the PDP is left very uncertain. Now, even in parts of the country, you cannot predict that those newcomers will not upend the older parties, at least in certain parts of the country. That changes the political arithmetic very, very dramatically. Many, many people have said that there could be a runoff. We don't know. But the fact of the matter is that whether you like it or not, APC and PDP remain the dominant parties, yes, but they are no longer unchallenged. In the north, Kwankwaso will be a factor, whether anybody likes it or not. He could spring some surprises. Whether those surprises are nasty or pleasant depends on who's looking at it. In the southern part of the country, in the middle belt, it is possible that candidate Peter Obi could also spring a major surprise in terms of maybe upending some of the older parties. And all these things are happening because the two older parties have taken Nigerians for granted for too long. Now, that's in the past. This is not a critique of their candidates. Their candidates have not yet been president. So we do not know for sure what kind of president they would be if they were to win. But the fact is that they have a legacy baggage of their party's previous performance in power. And so this is something, and then you have issues of national unity and nation building that will play out in Nigeria's elections. Many people would say, shouldn't the presidency of Nigeria rotate between the North and South, as has happened before? And if that is the case, what are the implications for some candidacies in the election? Some people will say, well, but the North has a very large voting population. So maybe those candidates can try to get a lot of Northern votes and then pad it up with a little votes in the South or across the country and win. All these are matters of political strategy. We don't know what the outcome will be. But, the unbiased position is that there is complexity in the 2023 elections, quite significantly.
Yes, I'm rather inclined to subscribe to that assessment. But beyond who might win that ballot in 2023, are you convinced that the front-runner candidates, based on your assessment of their qualities, have what it takes to deal with the enormous challenges this country faces in the economy, security, education, etc., some of the things that you mentioned?
Well, now, I believe that, to be very honest and to be very fair, if we remove the matter of legacy factor, I believe that the front runners can do the job. Each and any one of them can do the job. But there are some very important caveats here. Now, if people have formed certain political habits, and that is how they actually got to prominence or political dominance, it may be very difficult for them to change those habits if they get into office. And so that becomes a drawback. So that's one very important factor. But all the candidates are strong. We have to deal with what the primaries threw up. And that's the biggest tragedy of Nigerian politics, the primaries and the delegates who are simply for sale all the time, anywhere, anytime. And that's sad, because what it means is that parties do not necessarily bring out their best candidates. And that's where we need to begin to look at the problem of the candidates. What kind of candidates do we? I've said it before. I have said it before. INEC is not regulating the Nigerian political system as intrusively as it should. INEC should regulate Nigerian politicians the way the central bank regulates banks. When I was a regulator in the central bank, we did not give them any space. Before you go to the bathroom, you have to come and ask the permission from Sanusi or myself. That's the way it works, because banks are holding other people's money. And so we cannot allow you to toy with other people's money, So this is the way INEC should regulate Nigerian politicians. They have too much scope for GPT, and that's just too bad. And so the primaries get rigged, they become for the highest bidder and all that. And in the process, as we saw in my own case, some political parties become destroyed because they perpetuate injustice. And the karma, swiftly responds. And then that's it. They're scattered, they become irrelevant because they're short-sighted and greedy, and then they learn the lesson, but it's too late, when they may have been able to have strong candidates who could make them more relevant in the political arena.
What an absolutely cracking analysis. And I want to thank you exceedingly for joining us today and for giving us the benefit of your assessment. Professor Kingsley Moghalu is a lawyer, political economist, former deputy governor of the Nigerian Central Bank, and former presidential candidate. And he was talking to me there from Washington. Thank you very much indeed.